It's great to be here this afternoon. Again, second meeting of the year in person. A new trend starting now. We can start to work on things. It's been an interesting year. It's been a different year, and those things, those change items are going to keep coming at us. Today, when you sat down, in the center are some notepads and pencils. So if you reach over and take one of those, because I want you to, even if you don't use it today, I want you to take it with you. And there's a reason for that. You know, one of my early presentations, somebody said, do you really believe that what you're going to say is so important that we need to take notes? I said, no, it's not that at all, but I found that if you have something to doodle on, there's a greater likelihood you're not going to fall asleep during the presentation. So, really, why? Why have a theme? Why have a notepad? Why have the pencil? Change is all about remembering where you want to go, what you want to do, and consistency. Every year, the Rotary International president has a theme. And you see at the top of the notepad, you know, the theme is presented. Serve to change lives. It's a great theme. Every RI president's theme is developed a long time and then launched, you know, in the winter, basically around International Assembly, and then that's the theme. So why have another theme? Well, I think it's very important for us to focus our change and our efforts as close to home as we possibly can. And so the theme for this year, and the name of my governor's plan, is Rotary Alive. What does Rotary Alive mean? Well, it means that we have a choice to make. We have a choice of being a legacy organization, which looks at all the things that we've done in the past and says that's what we need to keep doing. If we just work at perfecting the past, we'll be prepared. But in periods of change, in periods of significant change, that doesn't work. It's okay if nothing is changing. Go back and just do better at all the things you used to do and you've been doing. But today we can't do that. We have to look forward, and we have to look towards being a living organization and saying, what is it that we need to do in the future in order to be a relevant organization? And that's really critical. You know, we're coming through COVID, hopefully. This morning, I started my day at Cleveland Clinic getting my booster shot, which, you know, the first opportunity I had to do it. So we're moving through that process. It looks like we have Delta in the rearview mirror. Who knows what's going to happen next? Got to be running out of people that can get COVID. So we should be getting beyond that. But it's important to understand that COVID is not the only situation that we have working. We really have three crises working at the same time. Certainly the public health crisis that was sprung on us in February, March of 2020 is something that we hadn't lived through before. It was very devastating. You know, a lot of people lost their lives, a huge number of families impacted, and still today we're dealing with it. You don't know, you always carry a mask with you when you go someplace. Now we're not sure what the rules are again. We don't know whether to shake hands, fist bump, or do any of that yet. All that sort of stuff going on. So that public health crisis triggered a lot of things. First thing it triggered was an economic crisis. Very significant. John mentioned that my business is Sparrows Bowling Center in Davie. And I guarantee you, in our 2020 business plan, we did not have a contingency for being closed for 90 days. But we were. And then when we opened, we were only allowed to use every other lane, so 50% capacity. And that stayed in place all the way until May of this year. So when we look at that, we say, look at the impact. You go to Publix, and you never know what's not going to be there. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, you say, are they in financial trouble or something? They can't keep the shelves stocked? But something as simple as plastic spoons. Can't find them in Publix, at least in Brown County you can. And it's been that way for several weeks. Who knows when they're going to show up again? The supply chain has been disrupted in any number of ways. And who knows how long that's going to take to settle in. So we had a major disruption around the economy. And you know, as we do move along, 3 to 5 years down the road, you'll be at home or in the office, you'll pull open a drawer, and you'll see a face mask, and you'll smile. And you'll think, remember, when we had to wear one of those every time we left the house. And you'll think back about the economic disruption. You remember when we couldn't go to Publix and get plastic spoons. You couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. The economy didn't allow for it at that point in time. Now, we'll still have impact of that 3 to 5 years out. And we'll still have impact of the public health piece, but it'll be manageable at that point. But it's the third crisis that's going to define us going forward. And that's the critical thing for us to look at as Rotarians and for Rotary clubs. And that's the crisis of social disruption. It's ongoing today. It didn't start with COVID. But COVID was a trigger to pull a lot of different things together. A lot of things happening. And it's chaos. And so you take everything the way it was and you shake it all up. And then a new order starts to emerge out of it. Many of us in the room, myself included, lived through that in the 1960s. And we had social disruption at a pretty significant level. A lot of things happening, of reorganizing. In the 70s were different than the 60s. And our culture shifted. We shifted from a culture of joining and belonging to a culture of individuals. And it was a subtle thing. There's a really good book about that. It happens to be called Bowling Alone. A fellow named Robert Putnam, who's a professor at Harvard, wrote that because bowling went through that. In the 50s and 60s, it was all about league bowling because everybody wanted to belong to something. Everybody wanted to join. All fraternal organizations and service organizations had peak membership at that point in time. But then here came the disruption. And all of a sudden we became a culture of individuals. And that's what we've been on through. And we've had bumps in the road and things have happened over time. But we haven't had a disruption of that magnitude until now. So what's happened? Well, every day it seems as if there's a new change. There's some different way of looking at things or some new situation coming about. So as Rotarians, what do we have to do? How do we do that? How do we work our way through it? Well, from my perspective is we become living Rotary clubs. We look to the future and say, what is it that we need to do? Where should we be paying our time and attention in order to be relevant in the future? And that relevance is critically important. You know, we were very concerned with membership coming through COVID, didn't know what's going to happen, and still there's some questions. But it's been very encouraging, the number of new members that we have that are coming in. You know, every single club, it seems, is adding members. And these members are looking for something. And basically what they want to get is a return on their investment of time and financial investment. Because they're saying, hey, something different is coming about. We want to be a part of it. And we think you, Rotary, is a vehicle for us to do that. So how do we do that together? And that comes down to basically 3 statements that really define Rotary. And the first statement is that people join and members stay in Rotary based on the value they anticipate receiving. They anticipate getting certain value. And then the second statement is the Rotary Club is responsible for creating that value. That value is created at the club level. And the third statement is the sole purpose for the district is to support the clubs. The district supports Rotary clubs create value for members. If we do that model and work through that model consistently, then the people that are joining us will stay with us. and more people will want to come to us. And so that's critical. And at this stage, it's very important for us to look forward. And it's very important for us to sort of take that step forward. Every month we have a district newsletter comes out. Hopefully everybody is sitting waiting for the first of the month. Open up your email and look at the district newsletter. For some reason it's called Rotary Alive. This month, for the first time, we're featuring a club that epitomizes what it means to be a living Rotary club. And that club is your club. I selected the Rotary Club of Miami to be the first featured living Rotary club because of what not just what you've been doing, but the history of the club, where you've been, how you've moved through different periods of the history. And it's basically, it's fundamental to understand that process. If you have legacy over here where you're stuck looking in the rearview mirror and say, let's just keep doing what we've always done and hopefully we'll do it a little bit better. And then over on the other side, you have that brand new club that's eager to go and they're starting and it's a living organization right from the beginning. And that's a continuum from one side to the other. And different clubs are at different points along the way. And so when we look at that and we say from the middle over to the right side, those are clubs that today are living Rotary clubs. And your club is there. For all clubs, what's important isn't so much where you are on that continuum, but you need to understand. But what's critically important is where are you going? Are you stepping forward? Are you taking a step forward towards living? Because if you don't consciously take that step forward towards being a living Rotary club, you will slide backwards towards being a legacy club. And in your history, at those periods in time where membership declined and things became stagnant, that's what was happening. No one said, hey, let's blow up this club. Let's not have this club be healthy, vibrant, growing. Nobody ever says that about any club. But they stop doing the things that you need to do in order to step forward. And as soon as you stop doing that, you start sliding backwards. And so other clubs, each of the next months until next June will be our last one. We'll feature other clubs. But I thought it was very important to start out with a club that everyone in the district, when they understand, can say, we can do that. It isn't that we have to have this trade area that's emerging and we've never had a down year. We've been at it for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. We've been at it for 104 years. Proved the test of time. Living versus legacy is not a matter of age. You're proving that. It's a matter of attitude. It's a matter of leadership. And so that's where we're going. And I think it's great that I'm able to be here today before this comes out, because I'm really proud that we're able to do that and honor your club in that way going forward, because you are a perfect example of what it means to be a living Rotary club. Now, Rotary Alive has a lot of components to it. It's a 5-year plan that I have 1 year to get done. And a quarter of that year is already gone. So, you know, I think every governor sits back and they have grand ideas. You know, most of them don't put it into a plan as detailed as what Rotary Alive is. And a lot of it, you know, is still going to be there yet to be accomplished. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of structure. There's four pillars to it. The first is structure, changing the structure of the district. The second is process, change the processes of the district. How do we work? What do we do? And the third is people. How are people brought into this? Once you have a structure in place and you have a process in place, how do people fit in? And then the fourth is engagement. And we're working on all of those, and most of the structure is in place. And just for a few minutes, I'd like to talk about a couple of those components that are important. One is youth services. Youth services has been a concept within Rotary for decades. And typically, up until a couple of years ago, there were 4 programs. Rotaract has now moved out of youth and now is a membership group. But then we have Interact, we have RILA, and Rotary Youth Exchange. And now this year we have a new program, Youth Peace in Action, which is rolling out. It's a little shaky right now with everything that's going on in access to schools, but those programs were all set up on the basis of being a tactical approach. In other words, saying, these are good programs that are run for the kids. These are good for the kids, so let's run Interact. Let's sponsor an Interact program. Let's send some kids to RILA. Let's sponsor a student in Youth Exchange. And so that tactical approach to it. But times have changed. And here we are in this environment, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go and what we're going to do and what we need to be doing. And wouldn't it be great if we had a strategic partner in that? Not just a group of individuals that we're providing programs for, but a true strategic partner for that. So with Rotary Alive, we changed the terminology a little bit, and I'm a big believer. If you want to change how people think, change the words. Use words in different ways. And so we're talking now about youth engagement and on a strategic level and saying, here are the programs. We're going to run these programs, but we want to engage with you as emerging adults to help us find the way to best deal with the changes that are happening in our culture so that we come out the other side of that. Now, when we do that, we have to understand when we truly engage, we're going to hear some things that as individuals we probably don't agree with. Some ideas, concepts, opinions. We don't have to agree, but we have to listen. We have to take it in. We have to say what's underlying this and how does that fit with where we need to be in the future. And so that concept of youth engagement is something that's really, really important for us. Then another concept that pulled together created a new function. Well, we had 5 basic functions. You know, communications. It was youth services, the Rotary Foundation Committee, and Extension. Created a new one: leadership development and training. What is that? Well, every year. And Randy is really getting to understand the process here. Every year, we have the district trainer, and the district trainer organizes this training that we have for officers, because we change officers every year. So Rotary, at every level, has this very rapid change to ownership, to leadership structure. And what happens when you have that fast change? You have a shallow reach. You can't go very deep. So the topics that you talk about are the topics that you've talked about. And the way you do it is the way you're going to do it is the way you do it. And if that seems like it has a bit of legacy to it, it does. And when you really think about it, it really does have a lot of legacy, because we're so consumed with that. We do a good job of taking those leaders and getting them ready to be Rotary for their year. But Rotary as we've seen it. Now we need to do that. And see, that's part of this whole thing. It isn't that we're abandoning the past or all that. We need to do that. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. We need more than that as we're looking at developing leaders. So what are the things we can do? We have out there floating around, Lee Ferris is heading up Rotary Leadership Institute. And that's a group session where the wisdom of the room is the trainer. It doesn't come from the front of the room, but it comes from the room. And it's topics and it's topics organized around the Rotary experience and what we need to do. And then over on the other side, we have Rotary International having a program where you can go to the Learning Center and take online classes. And there are a lot of them. A lot of it is that blocking and tackling. I had to take several courses for district governor. There's a Toastmaster program that is there in terms of that. So that's another component. So now you have the district trainer-driven events like pets, pre-pets, pets, assembly, and all of that together doing the blocking and tackling of Rotary. You have Rotary Leadership Institute, you have Learning Center over here, and then the fourth component ties it all together, and that's beyond Rotary leadership training and development. And as this is an emerging concept, Marcial is heading up that component of it right now. And we started out with the biggest program we could have, and it's called LEAD. Learn, Engage, Act, and Develop for LEAD. And we have 11 individuals that volunteered, one of which is in the room today. John Fulton's involved in the program. And John was at the initial session, an all-day session about 3 weeks ago, and excelled at the ropes course. You see John, climbing up and actually got up there. But it was a good event. We brought those folks together. We had presentations in the afternoon. And then last night we had the first online session. Again, it was a presentation of a fellow with a PhD out of Harvard guy. And Joe Roth brought him in right there. Then next Thursday night we have a 1-hour session with John Bucco, who is effectively the CEO of Rotary International. You have those presidents and they roll really fast, they have the themes and all that. Well, you have to have somebody behind the scenes that's there year in, year out, that's actually running the organization. That's John Bucco. And he's going to be presenting to our group of 11 next week. That program runs for 9 months, no cost to any participant. We have materials, books that are coming out, different forms of presentation. Why? It's one of the ways that we get to then bring leadership development to the clubs. And the reason for that is very simple. We need to strengthen our leadership pipeline. And that's what it's all about. We need to grow, and we need to grow people. Rotary International came up with, a couple of years ago, a new vision statement. When I first read it, I said, that's a good statement. And even today, I think all the words are correct. Some of them are just out of order. But let me read the statement to you. Together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. And the change that I would make, it would read this way. Together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change in ourselves, in our communities, and across the globe. And that's what we're looking at doing with leadership development and training. We're creating that. Because very simply, as we get better, you and I, as we get better, our clubs get better. As our clubs get better, our community gets better. As our communities get better, we get better globally. But it starts here, it starts with living Rotary clubs. And congratulations, you're our first highlighted living Rotary club. Thank you.